Tides of the past, the salty breeze carried memories Vikram Malhotra had long tried to forget. After 8 years away, the familiar coastline of Varkala felt both foreign and intimately known, like a recurring dream he couldn't quite place. He adjusted his sunglasses against the glare of the afternoon sun and continued down the beach path, clipboard in hand. Dr. Malhotra, the tide pools are just ahead. His research assistant called from several paces behind. The young graduate student was still struggling with the equipment cases, but Vikram barely registered his presence. His thoughts were elsewhere, caught between the data he needed to collect and the weight of returning home. The marine research grant had seemed perfect when he applied. Study the impact of rising ocean temperatures on local ecosystems in the Kerala coastline. What the paperwork hadn't mentioned was that the study would bring him back to the precise shoreline where he had once promised forever to someone he ultimately left behind. We should set up the first monitoring station here, Vikram said, forcing his mind back to work. He knelt to examine a particularly vibrant tide pool, noting the diverse array of sea anemones swaying beneath the water's surface. Their resilience had always fascinated him, creatures so delicate yet capable of weathering the harshest conditions. The small coastal town hadn't changed much. The same fishing boats dotted the harbor, the same coconut palms lined the shore, and the same sunset painted the horizon in hues of amber and rose. Only Vikram had changed, his once carefree demeanor now replaced by the calculated precision of a scientist who had published in leading journals and spoken at international conferences. He was marking coordinates on his GPS when he heard it, a laugh that triggered an avalanche of memories, soft musical with a slight catch at the end, a laugh he would have recognized anywhere. Vikram turned slowly, already knowing who he would see. She stood 30 feet away, surrounded by a small group of children who were carefully releasing something into the water. Her dark hair was shorter now, falling just past her shoulders, and the wind caught it as she gestured toward the sea. She wore practical clothes, khaki shorts, and a faded blue shirt with some kind of logo, but moved with the same grace that had once made him forget how to speak mid-sentence. Nisha Kapoor. The woman he had once believed would be his wife. One of the children tugged at her sleeve, pointing excitedly at whatever they had released into the water. Nisha crouched down beside the child, her face animated as she explained something, her hands moving expressively. Dr. Malhotra, is everything all right? His assistant asked, noticing Vikram's sudden stillness. Fine, he replied automatically, though his heart hammered against his ribs. Let's continue further down. But it was too late. Nisha had looked up, her eyes scanning the beach before landing squarely on him. Recognition dawned on her face, surprise, confusion, and something else he couldn't quite identify from this distance. For one breathless moment, they simply stared at each other across the sand, 8 years of absence suspended between them like the salt in the air. Then she nodded once, a small, uncertain gesture, before turning back to the children. Vikram exhaled slowly. He hadn't realized he'd been holding his breath. He had come to study how creatures adapt to changing environments. He just hadn't expected to become part of his own experiment. Ripples of distance. The research center buzzed with activity as Vikram organized his samples, but his mind kept drifting to the encounter on the beach. The fluorescent lights overhead seemed too harsh after a day in the sun, casting everything in an artificial glow that made him feel even more disoriented. These seagrass samples show promising resilience, Dia Sharma commented, peering through a microscope beside him. His colleague had accompanied him from Mumbai, unaware of the emotional minefield that was Varkala for Vikram. The local ecosystem might adapt better than we predicted. Adaptation, Vikram murmured. It's remarkable what we can force ourselves to accept when necessary. Dia gave him a curious look but didn't press. Instead, she slid another slide under her microscope and continued her analysis. 8 years ago, Vikram had been a different man, passionate but directionless, filled with grand dreams but lacking concrete plans. He'd fallen for Nisha during their final year at university, where her environmental journalism often intersected with his marine biology studies. They'd been inseparable through graduation, dreaming of changing the world together. The memory of their last night washed over him. They had sat on the very same beach, stars reflecting in the gentle waves. We could make it work, Nisha had insisted, her eyes bright with determination. I can find journalism work in Australia while you complete your doctorate. My scholarship barely covers my expenses, he'd countered. And your father's health? I've spoken to him. He understands this is my life, my choice. But Vikram had seen the reality more clearly. Her father's heart condition had worsened. The prestigious position at the Sydney Marine Institute wouldn't wait. Their paths were diverging, and he convinced himself a clean break would be kinder than a slow, painful dissolution across continents. Sometimes love isn't enough, he'd told her that night, the words feeling like stones in his mouth. The memory dissolved as his phone buzzed, pulling him back to the present. A text from an unknown local number. The hawksbill turtle hatchlings were successfully released. Thought your research might benefit from the data, Nisha. Formal, professional, as though they were mere acquaintances. That evening, Vikram walked along the shoreline, following the same path they had traced countless times together. The sunset painted the water in copper and gold, the beauty almost painful to witness alone. He spotted her at a distance, photographing something in a tide pool. Her concentration was absolute, unaware of his approach. Vikram hesitated, then continued forward. The hatchlings. That was your group on the beach, he said when he was close enough. Nisha straightened, tucking her camera into its case. Rehabilitation and release program. We've managed to improve survival rates by 15% this year. That's impressive work. It's necessary work, she corrected, her tone neutral but her eyes guarded. How long will your research keep you in Varkala? 3 months, possibly more. She nodded, looking past him toward the horizon. Welcome home, Vikram. But they both knew he had relinquished any claim to this place and to her long ago. Currents of coincidence, the Oizioe Rehabilitation Center stood at the edge of town, a modest compound of low buildings surrounded by lush tropical vegetation. A hand-painted sign read Samudra Wildlife Recovery Center, with a simple logo of a turtle and dolphin. Vikram hesitated at the entrance, questioning the impulse that had brought him here. His aunt's words from their phone call last night echoed in his mind. Your cousin is doing so much better now. Those animal therapy sessions changed everything after the accident. Arjun had been paralyzed from the waist down after a boating accident 2 years ago, an incident Vikram had only learned about months after it happened. Another consequence of his self-imposed exile from family connections. A bell chimed softly as he pushed open the door. The reception area was empty, but he could hear voices from a courtyard beyond. Following the sound, Vikram stepped outside to a scene that stopped him in his tracks. Arjun sat in his wheelchair beneath a banyan tree, laughing as he helped a young macaque navigate a series of simple tasks. Beside him, Nisha knelt, guiding his hands with gentle instructions. Neither had noticed Vikram's arrival. That's it, Nisha encouraged. He's responding to your energy. Animals sense our intentions more than our abilities. Like people should, Arjun replied, his voice stronger than Vikram remembered. Arjun, Vikram said, finally finding his voice. Both turned, surprise registering on their faces. The monkey scampered up a nearby tree, chattering indignantly at the interruption. Vikram, Arjun's face broke into a wide smile. Nobody told me you were back. Nisha stood brushing off her knees, her expression carefully neutral. I have other patients to check on. Take your time catching up, she said, disappearing into an adjacent building before Vikram could respond. You know Nisha? Vikram asked, taking a seat on the bench across from his cousin. Arjun raised an eyebrow. Know her. She's only the reason I didn't give up after the accident. This place, he gestured around them, has been my second home for 18 months now. I had no idea. How could you? You've been gone. There was no accusation in Arjun's voice, just a simple statement of fact that somehow made it worse. How did you end up here? Arjun's expression softened. After the accident, I fell into a depression. Traditional therapy wasn't helping. Then someone suggested animal-assisted rehabilitation. Nisha not only designed a program, specifically for my needs, but personally worked with me 3 times a week. She never mentioned knowing you when we met on the beach. That sounds like her, Arjun smiled. She never takes credit for the lives she changes. Did you know she founded this place using her journalism award money? Walked away from a promising career to build this center. Vikram felt something shift inside him. the uncomfortable sensation of realizing he'd been seeing only a fraction of the truth. The woman he had left behind had become someone remarkable, touching lives that intersected with his own in ways he never imagined. And she had done it all in silence, asking nothing in return, not even recognition. Shores of truth. The revelation about Nisha's connection to Arjun haunted Vikram for days. He threw himself into his research, analyzing samples with mechanical precision while his mind churned with questions. During a rare quiet moment at the research station, he called his aunt again. "Why didn't you tell me Nisha was involved with Arjun's rehabilitation?" he asked without preamble. A pause. "Then I thought you knew, Beta. She's been there from the beginning." "The beginning?" His aunt's voice softened. "After the accident. When the doctor said Arjun might never regain full mobility, it was Nisha who found us. Said she had read about similar cases responding to animal therapy. When we couldn't afford the specialized treatment, she created a scholarship program. Said an anonymous donor had funded it." Vikram's throat tightened. There was no anonymous donor, was there? "We suspected as much, but she would never confirm it. That girl has a way of giving that makes it impossible to refuse." His aunt hesitated. "There's something else. When Arjun needed the spinal surgery last year, the one the insurance wouldn't cover, the hospital suddenly received payment from a journalism grant fund. 3 lakhs. Just like that. The weight of this knowledge pressed against Vikram's chest as he later walked along the evening shore. Rain clouds gathered on the horizon, mirroring his turbulent thoughts. He found himself at the rehabilitation center again, though it was well past closing hours. A light still burned in the back office. Through the window he could see Nisha bent over paperwork, her face illuminated by a desk lamp, shadows gathering in the hollows beneath her cheekbones. She looked tired but determined, a familiar expression he had once loved. He knocked softly. She looked up, surprise briefly crossing her features before she composed herself and came to unlock the door. "Vikram, it's late. Why didn't you tell me?" he asked, the words escaping before he could shape them into something more eloquent. She stepped outside, closing the door behind her. "Tell you what? About Arjun, about the money for his surgery, about everything." Nisha leaned against the wall, studying him in the dim light. "Would it have mattered? You made your choice years ago. You could have reached out." "To say what? Your cousin needs help, please come back." She shook her head. "I didn't help Arjun to get your attention, Vikram. I did it because it needed to be done." The simplicity of her answer struck him with the force of a breaking wave. While he had been building his career, carefully constructing a life that excluded the past, she had been here, silently weaving threads of care that connected to him despite his absence. "I never stopped loving you," he admitted, the truth finally surfacing after years of denial. "I just convinced myself it was better this way." Lightning flashed across the distant sky, illuminating the tears in her eyes that she refused to let fall. Horizon of tomorrow. The first raindrops fell as they stood facing each other, the weight of unspoken words hanging between them. "Love was never our problem," Nisha finally said, her voice barely audible above the approaching storm. "It was trust. You didn't trust our love enough to weather the challenges." Vikram stepped closer, sheltered by the overhang as rain began to fall in earnest. "I thought I was being practical, sparing us both the pain of a slow separation. I was wrong." Thunder rolled across the sky as Nisha looked away, composing herself. "Come inside. We shouldn't have this conversation in a storm." The small office felt intimate, crowded with the physical evidence of Nisha's work, photographs of released animals, thank you letters from families, and detailed rehabilitation plans. A particularly striking image caught Vikram's attention. Arjun smiling broadly, holding a certificate of completion, with Nisha beside him. "This is who you've become," he said, gesturing to the room. "While I've been collecting data and publishing papers, you've been actually changing lives. Different paths, Vikram. Not better or worse, just different. But your journalism career was never my only dream." She sat at her desk, fingers lightly tracing a folder labeled Turtle Hatchery Expansion. "I found purpose here. The questions I couldn't answer through journalism, I addressed through direct action." Vikram nodded slowly. "I received an offer yesterday. A permanent research position at the Coastal Conservation Institute in Chennai. I was going to decline. Why? Because it would mean staying in India. Putting down roots, he met her eyes. Being closer to everything I left behind. A moment passed between them, charged with possibility. I'm not the same person you left on that beach, Nisha said, her walls finally lowering. I don't need promises or grand gestures anymore. What do you need? Partnership, equality, someone who sees challenges as problems to solve together, not reasons to walk away. Her voice strengthened. I've built a life here that matters to me. Vikram moved to the window, watching lightning illuminate the churning sea. My research on climate adaptation could complement your rehabilitation work. The Institute is looking for community partnerships. A small smile touched Nisha's lips, always the scientist looking for compatible systems. Some things don't change, he admitted, returning her smile. My analytical mind, your compassionate heart. And some things do. She stood, joining him at the window. We're not the same people who parted on that beach. No, he agreed, cautiously taking her hand. We're better. Outside, the storm began to recede, revealing the first stars of evening. Tomorrow would bring complications, negotiations, and the careful work of rebuilding trust. But tonight, as they watched the horizon together, there was only the simple truth that some connections, despite time and distance, remain unbroken, transformed by life's currents into something stronger, deeper, and infinitely more valuable than before.